Jan Muhammad Chand, alias Sufi Faqir Janan Sadiq Ali Sai, a Sufi master, a poet, a humanitarian, was born in the year 1895 Anno Domini 1313 after Hijra in a small village Haidery Hajra, Wara, Larkana region, Sindh, the southern province of Pakistan. His honorable parents, respected Rahim Khatun, the mother, the respected Muhammad Hassan Chand, the father, a religion teacher, named him Jan Muhammad. Jan Muhammad grew up with his four brothers, Haji Muhammad Alim, Muhammad Saleh, Noor Muhammad, Muhammad Bakshal. They lived a simple village life. At the school-going age, he was sent for basic Arabic lessons for progression to Quranic studies. By then, his father had given up teaching at their ancestral madrasa at Haidery Hajra. Saint Muhammad Hassan Chand had repudiated the usual way of life in his love and quest for divine. He had made his living in the wilds near the village, living aloof and alone on his own. Jan Muhammad, however, in 3 years couldn't do any better than grasping Alif, the first character of Arabic language, and had covered hardly a quarter of the basics. Eventually, his teacher called upon his elder brothers and advised to make a shepherd of the boy. By then, Jan Muhammad was 11 and his father had disappeared without leaving any trace. The grown-up sons looked for their father but never found his whereabouts. Jan Muhammad grew up a responsible shepherd and a dignified laborer, a thoughtful and an intuitive fellow. He became immensely inspired by the poetry of Shah Latif Bhittai, whose poems were sung and quoted by the commoners and the learned alike, and so is true to date. Jan Muhammad began to express his feelings and thoughts in poetry. He adopted Janar Chand as his nom de plume. He would compose poems about beauty and love and the miserable life which never settled rights of a peasant and a laborer. In the year 1919, Janar Chand joined the Khilafat movement, contributing with his patriotic songs along with his younger brother Muhammad Bakshal. They would participate at public gatherings and meetings in Larkana and other parts of the province, singing in the traditional folk way using yaktaro, a single-stringed Indus Valley musical instrument. In his early 30s, Janar Chand married the woman he loved, and the couple was blessed in due course of time with 5 daughters and 4 sons. He continued to earn livelihood as a peasant and used to work on a farmland owned by a Hindu landlord. After the Indo-Pak partition, that land was allotted to him by the government, but he refused to own it and gave it up for the needy laborers. His passion for finding the ultimate truth, to unveil the mystery behind the creations, and to understand the logic for the labors of life often drove him into debates. He would dialogue in plain talk or through his poetry with the literate, the intellectual folks, and the orthodox. He, in his soil, was a proponent of human rights, freedom of expression, and an antagonist to unfairness. His trust in the unseen was definite. He believed, today he has given, tomorrow he will. Humbleness was one of his attributes, but he stood bravely belligerent in the face of the false preaching and obtuse tradition sold under the flagpole of religion. When the movements for the rights of peasants began to rise in the Indo-Pak states, Janar Chand joined Comrade Haidery Jatoi, a revolutionist leftist peasant leader in Sindh. The opponent to Comrade Jatoi, Haji Khan Kalhoro, a wealthy landlord attempted to win off Janar Chand to his support but failed. Janar Chand had found a wider platform to do more what he had always been doing in his own capacity. His role as an active stalwart of the movement and of an action-igniting poet made him popular in the region of Larkana. That wasn't the end, merely the beginning of his long-carried aim. Meeting the Master. He nurtured his longing to serve the helpless. His thirst, though, for the true existence kept him ever the restless. He often recalled his father and had visions where he met him but briefly. To express his feelings, he sang his poems and of the Sufi masters, and to learn formal singing, he found a teacher, Sayyid Ghulam Hussain Shah, whose genre was classical and folk. He belonged to Multan, Lower Punjab. Shah became his mentor for rag as well as a companion. He played harmonium and Janar Chand sang with his yaktaro. They travelled occasionally to other villages of Sindh, paid reverences at various shrines of Sufi saints, and they attended Kacheri, a traditional gathering peculiar to Sindh, usually held on specified lunar dates or to celebrate a specific occasion. Janar Chand's urge for a spiritual guide mounted in time. He expressed it to Ghulam Hussain Shah, who assured him the answer for his quest. Shah took him to a village called Chahani, Ranipur, one of the stations of the Sufi master they had travelled to see. There he observed that figure was giving away money to the needy, and there a thought crossed his mind. The master is a wealthy man. And that master replied, reading his mind, there were times when we did not even see coinage. As for now, we don't adore it. Again he wondered, there may still be a better master somewhere. And the master spontaneously responded, sure, it takes a heart to believe that. This is the Mahdi. Janar Chand remained in awe, stayed over for 2 nights, yet indecisive. He headed to the shrine of Shah Abdul Latif Bhitai, whose articulations had always inspired him. Upon reaching there, he realized, as always, that Bhitai's teachings were alive in his works only. As for his legacy, there were no more true practitioners to impart the spiritual discipline, only amateurs. So he returned and found out that the master had gone to his other station near Kot Lichi. When he reached there, the master welcomed him and remarked, Bhitai has given away his earned wisdom in such a profusion that had that been followed, everyone in Sindh would have been a wali, a saint. And continued, when we buy even an earthenware vessel worth a taco, a penny, we tap it to check if it's intact. Bhitai is ever praiseworthy. Be glad you observe those too who pretend to be following him. That was one of the greatest Sufi masters of all times, Sufi Faqir Janan, the master and the leader for the spiritual path, a pure Sufi Faqir of Haidery and Surworthy disciplines, a poet, a humanist. Departed October 12, 1968, shrine at Shahpur Jahania, Sindh. Family lineage with Sayyid Sher Shah Jalal Surkhposh Bukhari of Uch Sharif. It was the year 1951. Janar Chand had finally found the guide for the spiritual journey. With his master's spiritual teachings and blessings, he adopted the Sufi life in due course of time. Bright orange color cloth being the symbol of belongingness to the Al-Haidery Al-Husseini Sufi school of thought was given to him by his master, the master gave him a name too, reflecting an assigned role. Hence, Janar Chand was titled by his master as Sadiq Ali, the teller of the truth belonging to Ali alayhi salam. Continually adopting arduous disciplines, Janar Chand evolved from a disciple into a master himself and was declared so with great appreciation and encouragement by his spiritual leader. He was immensely inspired by the simplicity of Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his holy descendants, peace be upon them. He always focused on and strived to follow in as close as he could the simple way of life chosen by Panjtan Pak alayhi salam, the Holy Five, peace be upon them. On the other hand, he was forsaken by his brothers and relatives who were inspired of fundamentalism except his mother, wife and children. He transformed his dress code and outlook gradually by wearing kettlebells in a robe worn like a long necklace, jingling anklets on a half-arm long white robe that was awarded to him by his master for his hard works. He moved further on and wore a dhoti, a genuine zanar, a thread with a bead round the neck and right arm, worn by Brahmins. On his forehead he wore a Hindu-like tilak, the entire outlook of a non-Muslim. Socially, people looked down on him, something he found himself to be happy with, for he knew what he was earning, that is, malamat, meaning disapproval by the worldly people in order to gain qurbat, closeness with the Creator, one of the practices by the Haidery discipline in Sufism. That wasn't all. Those who had grudges for him from the past felt stronger and did all that was possible for them to hurt or hunt him. Like most of the revolutionists and Sufis, Janar Chand too had to voluntarily migrate quite a few times, not due to inconvenience direct to him or his family by the villagers, but to his students and disciples who regularly visited him. False court cases were lodged against him, and to everybody's surprise, he pleaded guilty. He explained what he was thinking. Jail is considered hell. I decided to see it. That way, he who wants me to suffer will be pleased, and I will get to see the hell where everybody else longs for the heaven. The indictments involved theft and attempt to murder. The total sentence technically would have been nearly 7 years of imprisonment. For the later indictment, Qazi Fazullah, a very well-reputed senior advocate of Sindh, appeared for Janar Chand before the judge and acknowledged that was enlightened to him through vision to defend the mystic. The judges in both the events realized the intention of Janar Chand, though he did not reveal it. Conclusively, he spent 10 months in imprisonment at Sakhar jail. During that period, 12 prisoners embraced the righteous path and living by becoming his students in jail, and many became his admirers. Jan Muhammad Janar Chand Sai helped them through spiritual lessons and teachings of Sufism to overcome their weakness and get strong on the positive aspects to be able to feel nearness to the Lord. His altruistic services for the human society, a candid spokesperson of the commoners. The accounts of his life are vindication that counters the widely perceived image of Sufis as anti-social and anti-struggle people. Fortunately, Janar Chand's biographical account is in sufficient detail, unlike most of the Sufi masters, poets and mystics of the bygone era in the Indus Valley. All the Sufis, though, struggled hard and fought for the human rights and the betterment of the human society they dwelt, on the whole, but their services and approaches have often been deliberately misinterpreted, rejected, and opposed by the hypocrites present in the domination. Ghar Canal, Larkana. In the year 1963, the historic Ghar Canal in Larkana region was an approved yet ignored public project. It was meant to convene the dire need for means of irrigation in the entire region. Thousands of acres of land and helpless peasants waited for some relief. Hundreds of applications were written to the concerned authorities by the affected people whose livelihood depended on agriculture. The issue didn't escape Janar Chand's attention, and he decided to appeal to a minister whose residence was in Larkana, Mr. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, then the foreign minister. Janar Chand Sain, in his usual Sufi attire, arrived at a political gathering where Mr. Bhutto was the chief guest in Lalu rank, Larkana. The general attendance was surprised to see him in the socially non-acceptable and on top a non-Muslim appearance. He managed to grab the opportunity to draw the attention of Mr. Bhutto. In a poem, Janar Chand addressed his appeal for Ghar Canal issue in his enthusiastic way, clearly pointing out the corrupt bureaucracy as a root cause of the problem. Mr. Bhutto listened to him keenly with all the attention, greatly admiring and appreciating his effort. The matter was looked into in much detail by Mr. Bhutto, and Janar Chand was kept involved for the progress. Eventually, the issue was resolved and the canal was made fully functional, providing relief to hundreds of thousands of folks, and it continues to serve to this day. The blunt and fearless way of Janar Chand Sain impressed Mr. Bhutto, who spoke of him to Ayub Khan, then the president of the country. The president found it hard to believe that during his martial law, in effect, a common man could be so daring. Mr. Bhutto told him, "It is the quality of the Faqir, who is fearless." The president decided to see him. On an occasion, the president visited Larkana region and asked Mr. Bhutto to invite the Faqir. When he was asked to present the poem about Ghar Canal issue before the president, Janar Chand Sain presented a new one. In that poem, he became the voice of the country and addressed the president directly about the corruption, lawlessness, and injustice during his regime. The audience feared that the president may issue order to shoot the Faqir for his insolence, but he was rather appreciated by both the president and Mr. Bhutto. An archetypal philanthropist. Janar Chand Sain had lived as an egalitarian and always opposed gathering of wealth. He had spent all his life below poverty line and had decided to keep it that way to the very end. At different times, he was awarded of agricultural land by the President Ayub Khan and Mr. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, 43 acres collectively. Of that, he didn't keep even a single for himself or even for his sons. He voluntarily gave up in writing the ownership to the peasants who used to cultivate those lands and to those who were the destitute, and continued as a wayfarer himself, selling himself to help a poor man pay his debt, giving away his food to feed the starved, and his possessions to help the deprived were his ethics. He once sold himself in the local bazaar of Vara, Larkana district, to help a poor and aged man pay off his debt. Janar Chand was hired against the amount of 1200 rupees to work for a month looking after cattle of a local doctor who was known as Dr. Peer Sahib Qureshi and was surely a man of wisdom. He paid within a week the amount promised to the poor man to pay off his debt, and Jan Muhammad Sain served the contract. He inspired through actions and preached by practicing. On one occasion, Janan Chand Sai sold his bull along with the cart to bail out one of his very poor students who was arrested by local police as accused for a theft. Reviving and saving Sindhi Sufi folk musical instruments. One of his important contributions was encouraging his students to sing and hence spread the thought in folk way. That brought about the demand of simple but traditional musical instruments back, a lot of which were in fading phase, but due to Janan Chand's growing number of students using to play those instruments, they were saved from extinction. The Pitcher Canal. In the year 1975, he got Picherwa, the Pitcher Canal, Dadu district, functioning. The chief engineer for irrigation, Mr. Ghulam Rasul Shahani, and Janan Chand Sai both happened to be the students of the same spiritual master. He, in his unique way, presented the cry of the Pitcher Canal in poetic form, and Mr. Shahani took great interest. The issue was dealt with, bringing relief to thousands of farmers in villages. Ali Behrwa. Similarly, another canal, though a smaller one, was gotten approved and functioning with the efforts of Janan Chand Sai. He named it Ali Behrwa, Ocean of Ali. It was for a small village of the Changani, a Baloch tribe, near Wagan, a small town in Larkana region. The greatest of his services was his guiding the people that had gone astray. Healing their weak and forlorn spirits, he showed them the righteous path and gave them hope for life here and hereafter. In decades, the number of his followers multiplied from hundreds to thousands throughout the province. He enlightened the path for truth seekers, and people from all walks of life became his students. Quite a few gave up forever their unlawful ways of living. A lot many rectified their characters respectively. He brought a considerable number of families from the local gypsy tribes to the light of Islam. He would never force any rites, rather believed that effectiveness of actions depended upon the intention and personal will of the individual. Accused of blasphemy. It has always been the fruit of the labor for Sufis and saints to be accused of heresy, whether they were in East as Mansur al-Hillaj, who was executed for blasphemy in Turkey, or in West as Joan of Arc, executed by the Catholic Church on 30th May 1431 when she was 19, accused of heresy in Rouen, France. Shams Tabrizi's skin was peeled off in Baghdad. Makhdoom Bilawal was pulverized in a seed grinder under false accusation of dishonoring Quran by the Arghun rulers. Sarmad was beheaded for heretical poetry by the order of Emperor Aurangzeb in India. Shah Inayat, a Sufi master and a peasant revolutionist, was executed for revolting against the feudal system by the Kalhora rulers of Sindh. In 1991, Janan Chand, along with his followers, was accused of atheism, profanity, and having formed a cult of non-Islamic beliefs. The allegations had finer and interesting details, like a tale, all hoaxed by an orthodox mullah and many opponents of Sufism. That mullah, namely Shamsuddin Mughal, was a resident of Hossainabad, Hyderabad, whose adult son, Kamaruddin Mughal, had become a student of Faqir Janan Chand Sai. He gathered like-minded people, spreading the word, and eventually launched a formal campaign bringing notoriety to the Sufi master. As a result, Janan Chand Sai and his devotees gained controversial prominence nationwide and beyond. As concerns were raised against their heretic character in the local and national newspapers, more of the masses got to hear about them. Trial and death penalty. The clerics from four major sects, Viz. Ahl Sunnah, Fiqh Jafriya, Devbandi, Ahl Hadith, declared Janar Chand and his league as atheists and formally decreed death penalty. Consequently, raids and arrests were made in Hyderabad by the Hossainabad police, where the formal complaint was lodged in the month of August 1991. A few of Janar Chand's devotees were taken into custody, including the narrator of this feature. Throughout the province of Sindh, orange-colored dress depicting the belongingness to Sufi Faqir Janan Chand Sai was being condemned and mocked at. Janan Chand Sai was 96 then. He set out from Pyaro, a small village in district Tadu, one of his temporary habitats, to voluntarily present himself to the police. A significant number of devotees insisted to go along with him. However, he declined their requests, except of some 14 disciples. With those 14 disciples, on the day of 30th August 1991, Janar Chand Sai reached the Hossainabad police station and gave himself along with his disciples into the police custody. Later in the evening, they were shifted to the Nara jail, Hyderabad. There he joined a similar number of his students and disciples who were arrested a few days before him. Janar Chand Sai, while he was in the special cells with his followers, attempted to give way to them. He suggested to all his devotees that they could save themselves from the inevitable death sentence if they walked out on him. He explained that it was him, the one condemned. If they expressed disapproval of him, they could walk free with little or no imprisonment. The students actualized and insisted if they would give up on him, they wouldn't be true followers. On the other hand, when the Court of Magistrate of Hyderabad called upon the plaintiffs to appear for the trial, they denied appearing in the presence of Janar Chand in the court, fearing the atheist leader might cause death or considerable harm with his black magic or wrath. They insisted that Janar Chand must not be given the right to defend himself, as he is an atheist, and the court must pass the decree for him and his followers to be hanged till death. However, the court decided to dismiss the case, as it being baseless and false, with no witnesses to come forward and no evidence to prove the charges. From the civil society, few raised voice in support of Sufis. Mr. Yam Saki was one such a leading figure. The vigilant and realist judges had realized the matter. It was a reiterate of usual orthodox grudge for and dominance over Sufis as found in the history, and they ordered that all the accused should be released. Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto meets Sufi Faqir Janan Chand, a companion of her late father, Mr. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. In the year 1994, the word about the acquaintance and fellowship of Martyr Zulfikar Ali Bhutto with Sufi Faqir Janan Chand Sai reached Benazir Bhutto. She decided to meet her father's friend and arranged to see him in person. The meeting took place at Prime Minister House, Naudero, a small town in the vicinity of Larkana. She sat down on the carpet with Janar Chand Sai and asked for blessings and guidelines. She insisted to offer her service to him of financial and social nature, whatever he would accept. Janar Chand Sai assured her that for him, his master, Faqir Imam Mehdi Sai Jahania, is sufficient, and he didn't need any service to be provided to him. For the blessings, he told her that Martyr Bhutto, her respected father, was blessed by Janar Chand Sai's master. Hence, that continues. As for the guidelines, he clearly gave her the following points. You, your mother, and your brother, Mir Murtaza Bhutto, must stay united and no one shall defeat you. Get rid of the corrupt members in your political alliances who thrive on bribery and confiscation of rights of the common people. Cure the soil. The saline lands deprive the farmer folks. Serve the poor. And do pay your reverence at the shrine of Master Sayyid Imam Mehdi Sain Jahania in Shahpur Jahania. After the brief but succinct meeting, Benazir Bhutto, with her wish, got a 2-room quarter constructed right next to the hut of Faqir Janan Chand Sain. However, he never resided there, and it is used as a guest house for the visitors to his shrine. In the village of Mondar Lakha, Nasirabad, Larkana, the last abode of Faqir Janan Chand Sain. From the year 1992, accounts of his life and work on his poetry and lectures had started by the author of this feature. By the year 1995, Sufi Faqir Janan Chand Sain had given a lot of time to the culling and compiling of his poetic works and saw it completed. He by then had shared significant details of events of his century on earth. From the month of August 1995, his health began to decline. After having undergone a successful treatment for prostate at Dr. Adib Rizvi Ward, Civil Hospital, Karachi, in November the same year, he returned to Mondar Lakha to his home. On the eve of December 23rd, he affirmed his close disciple, Aman Ali Faqir, who used to nurse him, that he would depart the world at dawn. Before the sunrise on 24th December 1995, Shaban the 1st, 1416, after Hijrah, Sufi Faqir Janan Chand Sain moved to the other world. His departure saddened countless hearts across the country, and his funeral was a communal vista. He was buried adjacent to his abode in Mondar Lakha, of where the villagers felt honored to have his body rested in their village. He had chosen his place of burial right beside the grave of his wife and youngest son, who both had passed away a year ago in 1994. His annual celebrations are held at his shrine every year on 24th of December, and his Sufi poems are echoed throughout the country and beyond. Works and teachings. The pitch and pith in the words of Sufi Faqir Janan Chand Sain are one of a kind. In his poetic works, he has unfolded in plain language many mysteries and elaborated in depth a lot of indications by the masters of bygone era. He was an aficionado of the poetry and expressions of the great Sufi master Shah Abdul Latif Bhittai. In his works, reflections of the basic ideologies highlighted by the former great Sufi masters are found. He has notably asserted the oneness and divinity of the Holy Five, Pantan Pak alayhi salam, peace be upon them. He finds their ways as the best demonstration of Islam's message for the entire human race. Glimpses of the characteristics of the Peasant salam, the 12 Imams, the 14 Infallibles, peace be upon them all, the martyrs of Karbala, peace be upon them all, and the executed Sufis are vital in his poems. Valuing humanity on the whole is widely found in his poems, with references from Quran and Hadith, as Adam being the center of the creation. He, therefore, taught that recognizing the worth of and respect for a human without discriminations and bias is the key to a peaceful and harmonized human society, the core message of Islam. Strong denunciation is found in the teachings of Janan Sain for sectarian leadership that divides the believers of Islam and is responsible for weakening it for centuries. Janan Sain defied the customs of purported spiritual leaders in the region who, in the name of religious leadership and Sufi masterhood, have customs that make them rich and their followers burdened, where the masters live lavishly, ripping off their devotees of their wealth and personal possessions, a corrupt and a murky tradition. He condemned such practices and has strongly criticized such a culture in his poetry and teachings. He changed the approach to the understanding of the major tariqa disciplines of Sufism, various orders, that is, Naqshbandi, Chishti, Qadri, Surwardi, and Haidery. He defined them unified and interlinked as components and functions of the Sufi way and not as separate orders or ways, as is the common understanding. He has observed that 14th Hijra century is the century of zenith of illumination of knowledge and science, brightness and clarity, in Sindhi, Chitai, like the full moon on every 14th night of lunar month. He stated that the progress that the human race has made during the 14th Hijra century will be the basis for all the further progress, innovation and development ever to be made by humans. 14th century after Hijra is a period in the Islamic calendar that corresponds to 1883 to 1980 current era. He called the 14th Hijra century the century of blessing and victory, Faiz, and the 15th Hijra century the century of disclosure, exposure, uncovering, in Sindhi, Padri. He clarified that truth of any sort will not remain hidden in the 15th Hijra century, the age of information that started in 1980 current era. One of his major predictions is that there shall be 15 more centuries for life on earth at the least, totaling it up to 30 according to Hijra calendar. He adds that even at that stage, it would be, as always, the choice of the Creator. Hakisbat, the truth evident, the book of his poems. Faqir Janan Sain, in the year 1993, titled the collection of his poetry, which comprises almost 600 poems, Hakisbat, that is, truth evident. It was first published in parts, but in 1997, in the form of one book by the author of this feature. In his works, he has bridged the ravines, reviving the message of Wahdatul Wujud, the unity of existence, and has described a lot more than ever before him. Faqir Janan Sain's sons too were his students and disciples, namely Faqir Fateh Ali Chand Nasib Ali Sain, martyred 2003, Faqir Shaukat Ali Chand Adib Ali Sain, departed 1997, Faqir Muhammad Ali Chand Mast Ali Sain, departed 1994, who stood by their father and carried forward his message and teachings. Throughout Sindh, Pakistan, and beyond, disciples, students, and devotees strive to live up to the message of this great Sufi master, Faqir Janan Chand Sai, and serve humanity simply in the Sufi way. His three grandsons, sons of Faqir Shaukat Ali Adib Ali Sai, namely Sai Muhammad Hassan, Sai Muhammad Ali, Sai Jan Muhammad, live a simple Sufi life in huts by his shrine and are keeping alive his message and teachings.
Go,